Well, I think we'll get started, and people just catch up if they come in late. Thanks for coming to our workshop. It originally took place at the Society of Georgia Archivists workshop. They created it, and they put it out there for other people to use it and format it for their purposes. It is being recorded, so I want to let you guys know that. The way to find it is if you go to our library webpage, workshops, and then library instruction programs over here. And if you look at the screen in between you guys, that's the instructor screen. It's got the YouTube page. So it's on their YouTube page. Here are the workshops. And then also, if you go to the Panopto site, I guess, Iowa State Panopto site, that's where the workshops are recorded also. So and they're recording, our voice and the presentation. So you'll have that if you'd like it. And go. Okay. We'll take questions after the presentation and before our activity. And if you have any technical issues, just wave your hand. Hopefully everything's working. The files that there's files on your computers that you'll be working with later, and we checked, and I think all the computers have them. So the people who did the workshop in July 2014 gave us wonderful illustrations. We're your instructors, Kimberly Anderson, and I'm Rachel Seal. Kim is the Digital Initiatives Archivist for Iowa State. She's responsible for leading the library's work to preserve its born digital materials. She also heads the Digital Initiatives Unit, which is responsible for creating digital collections and producing and overseeing other digital projects using the library's collections. Kim's worked in libraries and archives since 1995 in a variety of positions. Immediately prior to being here, she was assistant professor and director of the Archival Studies program at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee School of Information Studies. She holds a doctorate in information studies with a focus on archival studies and a master's of library and information science, both from UCLA. I'm Rachel Seal. I'm the outreach archivist here in Special Collections and University Archives. I'm responsible for education, programming, and promotional outreach to faculty, students, and those whose research and teaching and or learning activities benefit from using our Special Collections and Archives materials. I've worked in libraries and archives in different positions also since 1999. I've spent the last 6 years as archivist at the University of Alaska Fairbanks before coming here in January. I've taken several courses and workshops on managing digital records and digital preservation, and I have a Master's of Library and Information Science from Simmons College with a concentration in archival studies. So now that we're done with introductions. So digital record keeping or personal digital archiving, those two terms come up. If you Google them, you get the same kind of resources, is no different than regular record keeping or keeping the kinds of things you've always kept to document your personal and family life. You keep the same kinds of things you've always kept. What's different now is it's digital, so how you keep it is different, and how you retrieve it later might be different. You can't just throw digital files in the attic, basement, or storage room and expect them to stay the same when you try to get to them 10 years from now. So that's the main difference, but it's still the same kind of stuff that you've always kept. You should care about archiving your personal records for your legacy, and also because you need records in life, right? If we could sit a little bit further up, because the back row instructor monitors don't work. Thank you. So you should care about archiving your personal records for your legacy, and also because you need records in life. We keep records, for tax purposes, for legal reasons, and often your own reference. Your medical records, your vet visits, your car maintenance history. You don't necessarily keep all your records forever, but sometimes you need them to last longer than a year or two. And sometimes you want to keep them as long as you can. So what qualifies as a personal record? If you Google define records, you get the definition, 2 definitions actually. A thing constituting a piece of evidence about the past, especially an account of an act or occurrence kept in writing or some other permanent form, and also the sum of the past achievements or actions of a person or organization, a person or thing's previous conduct or performance. Both of these definitions apply and are the kinds of records that we're going to be talking about today. An organization owns all of its records that are created as evidence of its business transactions, and an individual owns, your records too that are evidence of your business transactions, your personal transactions, and your history. So the first thing you're going to want to do you need to figure out what your records are and how long you want to keep them. And if you decide to keep them, you don't need to keep everything that you probably have stored right now. While you're inventorying, it doesn't hurt to survey the file formats you have. We'll talk about file formats later. Like I mentioned earlier, you have financial records. They include loan payoffs, tax returns, canceled checks, bank statements, paycheck stubs, legal records, wills, marriage licenses, adoption papers, death certificates, deeds, medical records, and then your historical records, photos, videos, scanned or born digital documents, maybe scrapbooks, that kind of thing. The kind of records that you kind of want to keep or hold on to, or maybe pass on to your family when you're gone. You hold on to these records for a certain length of time, and some you hold on to for as long as you can. Their future purpose dictates how long you'll need them. Like I said earlier, digital records just can't be filed away in a cabinet and stored, and you'll find them in the same conditions when you need them as when you originally stored them. Files get easily corrupted, and even opening a digital file can change it. Programs used to create records get outdated and are obsolete, and if you don't have current versions, sometimes you can't open them. I think I eventually threw away my 3.5 floppy disks that I've been carting around since my undergraduate days. I didn't want anything on there, but even if I had been able to get a computer with a 3.5 floppy or a plug-in that had that, I don't even know what word processing program I used. I know I used Works, which you might be able to open now, but I used something that wasn't even Microsoft. So that kind of stuff, that changes, and just because you saved it doesn't mean it's going to. Programs change, companies die, they merge, not everything stays the same. I remember when you couldn't open up, I think, Word on Mac and also open it up on a PC. I think that's different now, but things like that. So Cal Lee, who is an archivist, and he's really gone forward with digital forensics and managing digital records, he said at a Society of Georgia Archivists annual meeting that digital objects are sets of instructions for future interactions. Digital records are rendered, represented, experienced. Think of them as interactions at various technical and social levels. They're interactions between hardware and software, between software and files, and interactions between the record creator, the record steward, and the record user. For example, this is a few different ways to represent a cat video. All of these are accurate, and they're all parts of a digital record, representation of a digital record. So one important thing to do, I think, is you want to plan ahead how you're going to want to keep your records, how you'll be trying to access them later. For example, a recent example, last year I did TurboTax to file my taxes. I used my friend's TurboTax on her computer, and I tried to access TurboTax records this year because I emailed myself the file, and I can't open them because I don't have TurboTax installed on my computer. I did save a PDF of my tax return and mail it to myself, and so I have that. But that's just something I hadn't thought of. I was too cheap to buy my own copy, and my friend offered, so I did it. And now, it would be helpful if I'd had that, because this year, now that I'm doing my own version of, TurboTax, they could have used last year's return for this year. But just something I hadn't planned ahead. So, that's just a small example of thinking ahead when you're doing your records. Regarding organization, you want to maintain the context of your files. When these files are used again, it'll be important to know where they were and how they were used. The simplest way to maintain this is through descriptive foldering. Generally, your files should be organized into logical groupings, reflecting specific projects or particular people, procedures, activities, geography, or some organization that reflects how you work. Sometimes it's easy to, I know that I kind of have files ahead of time, like personnel, professional development, and then I'll have just a bunch of files unorganized until some kind of organization presents itself, and then it gets overwhelming to see that big list of files, and then I'll dump them in a folder. So even if you don't do it ahead of time as you're saving files, just try to organize them and try to be consistent with how you organize them. Additionally, with your folders, you want your file names themselves to be descriptive and to make good sense. Rather than naming things by generic terms like flyer or committee notes, maybe make it Flyer Holiday Party 2008-1205. That gives a description of the flyer and also the date of the party. That way, if you can't open the records, at least you'll have an idea of what it is. Is that important for me to keep? I can delete it. Or not, you want to open it. Or Student Recruitment Committee Notes 2013-0422. Use computer-friendly file names. Computer programs are sensitive to the use of symbols and names. Some programs handle things differently. Some programs you can use certain symbols, but you use another program or another computer and it won't open it. If you use something like, you go from a PC to a Mac to Linux. The easiest way to avoid losing access to your files is through adopting some file naming conventions. So avoid using characters like the backslashes, colon, asterisk, question mark, ampersand, quotation marks. Avoid using spaces. They can be replaced with an underscore or a hyphen, or don't use spaces at all, just capitalize the new word and keep it all together. That way it'll keep it shorter. Include dates with your file name, 4-digit year, month, the day, at least the year and the month. And again, just try to keep them short, but descriptive. And label your storage media. All of these things, will help you analyze, I think, when you come across your files, if you haven't, to see if you need to keep them or how important they are to try to retrieve if you can't get to them again. Make sure your files are backed up. Save your files to a place that's being backed up by your department. You can use Cybox or another mechanism for ensuring your files are routinely backed up. Don't compress your files. Compression can alter or corrupt files. Migrate your files. I think that's a big thing that most of us don't do. When your office buys new software, save a copy of the file in the new format. Ideally, you'd keep the original file and then the migrated file, since this will keep the original bitstream intact. I admit that I don't do this. But there, there's an argument to do it. Use sustainable file formats. Computer files remain accessible by migrating them to the newest formats. So it's important to save files in formats that won't be easily corrupted over time and are likely to be readable in future software. I don't know if we've included it on our handout, but there's information out there on the file formats that are sustainable that we can get to if it's not on the handout. And privacy and security challenges. Personal records have always contained private and personally identifying information, but technological factors and the sheer number of digital records make it harder to delete or even know about the private information that exists in a digital record collection. Staying aware of the digital records you have and proactively manage them will empower you to deal with privacy and security challenge. One tactic to use is encryption. It's like using algorithms to transform digital records into formats that are intentionally harder to read. Only people who have like a key can really access that information. I Googled why encryption, and there were a lot of resources on, because I used passwords. That was going to be my next suggestion. That's an easy thing. Even if you don't, a lot of software allows you to password protect something. Maybe you don't regularly do it except, maybe your phone or secure files. But if the option's there, password protect it. Encryption is one step above that. One thing I read from someone who was really arguing for encryption was encrypt all your files, because if you have some encrypted and some aren't, the ones that are encrypted immediately let someone know who's snooping around in your stuff. These files are important. So,
all right.
Now we'll pick him.
Yep. So we're going to talk storage. No, I have to wait. Sorry. Okay, we're switching and dropping the mic. Okay, so we're going to talk storage. This workshop has been designed as kind of a basic intro. It sounds like a lot of you just really have personal files at home, or some of you have files saved on workspaces and so forth. But we're guessing that cloud services, external storage, and personal servers are the type of space you're probably storing your stuff right now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of those and considerations you'll need when you decide where you're going to store your stuff. So one of the first things I want to make clear, cloud storage, still physical. You can't escape physicality just because you have digital stuff. So what that means is that items stored on the cloud are not stored necessarily on your computer or your tablet or your phone or whatever, but they are stored on someone else's device somewhere. They are stored in a server sitting somewhere, maybe multiple servers, preferably multiple servers. That means that everything is still subject to flood, tornado, I'm from California, earthquakes, etc. So one of the things you want to think about, and we'll look at the pros and cons of a couple of these in a minute, is you don't want to just rely on one thing. If these are really important files, do not just put them in one spot. So one of the things you can do with these examples we've got here is you can look at their terms of service. And I did a little bit of this before the workshop just to give you some ideas. So for Google Drive, I could find no terms of service without initiating a download. So keep that in mind, that sometimes you can't find out this stuff in advance before you try to use the service. Apple iCloud. iCloud will save your last 3 backups, but they also explicitly state that you are responsible for backing up these things on your own computer. So again, keep in mind, cloud storage is not foolproof. You have to understand what they really are offering you. And also, Apple, like many other providers, reserves the right to remove your content at will. Again, don't just put all your stuff in one spot. Dropbox, they don't tell you whether it's the servers are in the US or elsewhere, and that's probably honestly just for a business plan that they're trying to figure out where they can get server farms. But they're not responsible for loss of files, and you aren't able to access your files in certain countries. Like Sudan, Syria, Iran, North Korea, just because we have US has trade embargoes. So my point being that it's not just a simple, oh, I found a place to store stuff, I'm done. You really need to read the terms of service. You need to understand, like, where are they physically going to locate your things? So when we do digital preservation for library materials, for archival library materials, we think about things like, well, if we contract with this service, their servers are located in San Francisco. They've also got some in Georgia. Okay, so if an earthquake hits San Francisco, and they replicate our stuff in Georgia, we'll at least have one copy that survives. So that's the kind of, again, you probably don't want to go to all that trouble for everything you have, but for at least some of it, you're probably going to want to do that. So, okay, so pros of cloud storage. You can sync data from multiple devices. I mean, I think we all like this one. That makes it kind of easy to use. It does provide some backup and recovery, but as I said, there's a caveat there. And a lot of them, like Dropbox, at least when I joined it, it was free for me. I don't know if it's still free for just a small amount, but anyways, there are some pros. Cons are security and privacy concerns, as Rachel just discussed. File type restrictions, so maybe you have very large or very odd files, and they only want you to use like typical Office type files. And also, if you're giving a company all your, like Dropbox, I mean, again, I'm a Dropbox user. I'm not trying to pick on any particular company, but say you give them your files and that's the only place you store them, and then whoops, they've gone out of business and all your files are gone. So it's just stuff like that to think about. Yeah. So here's the thing about Cybox. There's a campus data security policy and data use policy where I'm not sure. So check with IT, but the thing is that we're supposed to use that for campus stuff. So if you want your own thing, but right now anything you put in Cybox, central IT can do it. They can view it. They can go through it. So I would not keep personal files in your Office accounts. I would move it anyway. So if you have personal stuff in there that you want to move, I'd just move it now. I'm guessing that you would have some leeway, but I don't actually know what the agreement campus has with Cybox or Box. Okay. Yeah. So if you have personal papers, like a lot of us have working files we use to do our day-to-day work, those would probably be fine under the data policies for campus. But if you're talking like, oh, you throw in some family photos or something, that would probably not be okay. Again, I don't have the policy in front of me, but in any case, I think Cheryl might be right there that you're not going to, I don't know how long, there might be a window of time. Some places have windows of time, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a service you get as being an employer affiliated with a campus. So good question. So yes, everyone, just so you know, Cybox is Box, in case you didn't know that. So okay. So external storage, I need to keep an eye on my time here. 3:40, right? Okay. So external storage is things like your USB flash drive. You know, if you want to burn stuff onto a CD. When I first got internet, or no, not when I first got internet. When I first got email, I was very excited and started to save emails onto 3.25 floppy drives. Those are all dead now. I have no access to them. But you know, that's a good example of external storage that does not last beyond my interest in these files. I would love to see all the ASCII art I saved in, you know, the 90s. That was fun. Yeah, so there's some pros and cons there. Pros, as many things as you want to buy, that's how much stuff you can save. There is a backup. It's an easy backup. It's easier in many ways than just having multiple accounts that you have to manage. And it could be cheaper than cloud storage depending on how much we're talking about. But again, we can't escape physical things. These are physical as well. You could spill coffee on it. You could run over it with your car. You could leave it on the bus. Maybe you rub magnets all over it. I don't know. It can be injured. So data can rot and decay over time. This is the idea of data rot, which is, we're going to have a picture for you in a little while. But things, if they're not actively maintained, just kind of little electrical impulses can mess up the bits. Maybe the system you were using to create and access the file isn't around anymore, and 10 years later you try to open it and you're like, wow, I have no idea what this document was. So, I mean, in general, we recommend that you do a variety of things. That's sort of the punchline here, is do a variety of stuff. So a network server, so a lot of you are all here on campus. A lot of us have access to some kind of office-y, networky server thing, whether you're a student or staff member. Where are my notes about that? This is, again, it's a physical object. In this case, it's stored in servers on campus, not geographically distributed. Should a tornado wreak havoc in all of Ames, your own computer, your external drives, and the network server will all be gone. So I guess that's my big point. It's all physical. There's no escape to the physicalness of this. Even though it's digital, it's physical. So yeah, so keep that in mind. That is also not a perfect solution. With network servers, you have more control than you would over a cloud option. Cons, this is where we're talking about policy. Compliance with workplace policies. Maybe stuff you want to save on there you're not supposed to. Or maybe your access could be cut off. Or maybe you need to save files that are too big to the space you've been given. It's generalized storage for devices if you can access it. In most cases, access files remotely. There's people that can help you with these things. So people like in IT can go in and look at your file. Well, they can help you with your files. You get maintenance from power outages and damage. There's usually power strips and so forth. So there's pros and cons. A lot of us find it very convenient. I know I love my network storage, although I'm starting to switch to box more because I'm finding it more convenient for home access. But there are options. So best practices for access and ongoing management. So this is the life cycle of digital stewardship. And most of you probably do not think about these terms when you're thinking about your own personal files. First, this whole cycle here that you want to see, or that we see here, is intended to demonstrate that digital files are not just throw it somewhere and then you're done. It's an active process. It's an active, I keep hitting this microphone. It's an active curation. So we start off with creation. So let me give you an example. Say you book a photographer for a wedding and the person takes 250 images. So that's the creation. The photographer may have already described or organized each file through using a file name like Rachel talked about earlier. That would be organize, describe. Appraise and select now is where you decide what you're going to keep. So are you going to keep all the images? I might keep all the images until my bill was paid and that was all settled. But maybe in the long run, I don't really want the one where Aunt Mary is sneezing repeatedly. Maybe I just want photos that I'm happier with, so I wouldn't keep them all. So that's appraise and select. And then store to preserve. So you're going to store them all to begin with by keeping the ones you need, even if I'm babbling. You're going to store the ones you need, and then you're going to long-term preserve the ones you want. Does that make sense? I'm trying to make a distinction here. I'm not sure it's working. Storage is not preservation. Preservation is for the things you want long-term. Storage is for the things you need to deal with in the immediate time frame. So those are two different steps, but they feed into one another. And the reason you preserve things is so you can get to this final step here, where you're going to access and reuse and transform. So back to the wedding photos. Say you've kept like 200 ones that you really liked and got rid of 50 you didn't. In 20 years, maybe you want to be able to make, I don't know, scrapbooks or tote bags or something. You need to be able to access your files again. So the actively preserved part, again, the key here is active. In order to preserve those things for that duration, you would have had to have made sure it was stored in multiple places, made sure files were migrated to newer formats over time, checked on them to make sure they're still accessible. So by the time you get to access, reuse, transform, you're able to do something with them, and then as soon as you make a new digital file, the whole cycle starts over again. So it's this long, messy, active thing, whereas you might think of if you have some old photo albums, say, from your family or whatever, those you can stick on your shelf. You don't have to do this whole big cycle because it's all embedded in like the action of sticking it on the shelf. So, so here's some example of data rot. So there's some examples of formats here and how they don't translate over time. The first one shows the original environment of MS Office Works, which is this one. And it shows what it looked like when the file was made. Over here is Microsoft Office 2007. Same file, but not the same result. So the original features in the Microsoft Works file are not supported in the 2007, so the formatting gets all messed up. So when you're keeping your records, preserving them, and deciding what format to use, keep in mind that things need to last for the long term. Things might be fine now if it was, I don't remember when Microsoft Works was in use, but say 20 years ago, that's a fabulous format to keep your stuff in. Now, probably Microsoft, whatever, 2000 or something, I don't know, whatever it was. There's so many iterations, I don't remember which versions of Word we've had, but that may not work. We have on our handout a list for the Library of Congress formats. Is that right? It's on there, right? Yeah. That you can look at to see, get some kind of idea of which formats are okay or likely to survive longer than others. And again, even if you have a pretty good format, you're still going to have to do things like migrate it, like move it from one format to the next. It's not just going to stay in one spot. Okay, so let's talk about the digital afterlife. That was a word that came up in our abstract for this workshop. I'm assuming you all noticed that and we're like, what's that? The digital afterlife is this idea that in this era, when we die, we leave digital objects behind. So maybe some of you have already dealt with this, but people's Facebook accounts outlive them. People's Twitter accounts outlive them. Their Flickr accounts outlive them. Your files on your computer outlive them. I still have, my aunt died several years ago, and I've gone through, I have a bunch of photos that she didn't label very well, and I don't know who these people are in these photos, and they're all from her hard drive. So I don't know, maybe they're family members, maybe not. Maybe I'm supposed to send them on to someone, I don't know. In contrast, she was such a good record keeper with her physical objects that to the point that if you flipped over a painting on the wall, she would have like a provenance note, but she didn't think that way about her digital files. So to keep in mind, that's what we mean by the digital afterlife. So some tips you can do, either if you're talking to someone or you're thinking for yourself, remember that people can't know what you were thinking about when you made your file system. So create a description of the files. Like, had I known one set of photos was, reunion with work friends versus another one was a distant family, my aunt was a genealogist, so a distant branch of the family, those would have had different implications to me as to what I should do with those files. Create intelligent file names. Rachel had said this earlier. This is basically the same stuff you do when you want to keep the records for yourself long term, but when you're thinking about giving your records away or what happens in the digital afterlife, these are, again, there's things you can do to help with that. Use open formats. So again, look at the Library of Congress list we've sent you. Even if they're not fully open, PDF is not fully open, but it's well understood. Well understood is also okay, because that means digital preservationists have come up with ways to be able to manage that long term. Again, duplication, right? You want to have multiple copies in different places and in 2 separate physical locations. So you don't want to just say, oh, well, the person, my other person I know in town has got the extra copy for me, because again, hopefully there's no tornadoes coming, but you never know. Keep in stable and moderate temperatures. Again, the physicality of the files. If you have, say, your laptop, computer, whatever, and that's the only storage you're using, and it's a hot day and you forgot to leave it, you forgot and left it in the car, not so good. Same thing with external drives. And like if you have some CDs or DVDs or stuff like that, same thing. Create new copies of the storage media every 5 years, so meaning transfer it to new storage media in addition to trying to have a cloud backup. Pass along digital passwords. You can use a password manager and give someone the master password number, or you can have it written clearly where if something were to happen, they'd be able to find it. And I've been talking about it as if people will, just in the case of death, but also like, it's been very helpful for me at times for my husband to have access to my digital files when I'm like overseas and don't have access to my bank account because I messed up something. Just things like that. If I forgot to tell them I was going to travel and then whoops, I have no money anymore. This is the kind of thing where it's just helpful to have some mechanism for other people being able to help you. And then we always make the suggestion, we are archivists, we've seen things. Remove inappropriate material unless you want that to be your record. If you want that to be your record, that's fine, but it may not be you may not want people to have that be their lasting memory of you. So that is our idea, sort of the digital afterlife idea, which we sort of liked as something that people don't talk about a lot. Here's some of the links we talked about. They're also on your handout, which the handouts are at the back.
I have them here.
Oh. Oh, okay, right. Okay, we have them here. We'll get them at the end. And then we're going to do questions. Yeah. And then we're going to do an activity after questions, so this is not over. The activity should be lots of fun.
Honestly, it's a legitimate question. I find when I clean files is when I move, because I have no patience. I have no patience for packing it again, and I don't need it. I think the 3.5 floppies didn't make it to Fairbanks. A lot of my digital files, a bunch of friends' weddings and had all these, they didn't make it to Ames because I was tired of, I had to, do extra storage. And so, yeah, for me, and hopefully I won't move again anytime soon, but yeah, it's hard to make time for it. Sometimes I think of it on days, maybe on bad weather days, or because it's tedious, right?
Yeah,
it's super tedious.
New computer in the next 2 months.
Oh, that would be the time to do it before you get your new computer.
Right.
When are you going to do it?
But my suggestion, and I did this a couple years ago, is to just start. Don't, and when I got the new computer, I took one file and called it old files. Mm-hmm. And all of the old stuff went into that file. I have yet to look at any of it.
Right.
So basically, you have it if you need to go back, but now start and start making folders as you go. Oh, I got this new project. Just name a folder of that project, and then just as you get emails, start putting stuff in there. You just have to start.
That's really great advice. Just do it, because even if you don't finish it, at least you're making progress. If you wait until you have enough time to do it, you'll never get it done because you'll never have enough time. You probably have hundreds of pictures. But that's a great idea. Even if you can't finish it that day, just start working on it, and then moving forward, you can kind of organize.
Yeah, if you have to go back and find stuff, then you go, oh, well, I need to find
Mm-hmm.
this. Then you can create that.
Right.
For that stuff in the past. Because if you're like me, nobody moves backwards anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Very rarely. I think her comment about, when you leave, stuff goes away. It's that whole, there is no institutional memory.
Right.
When a person leaves, they're gone. And in fact, your email account, if you've ever known anybody who leaves, the day after you're gone, your email account disappears. You're done. You do not exist anymore.
So a couple of things about this. If you're talking about files, I mean, I think this applies. People in this room seem to, it's both personal and some work stuff, right? For work stuff, the university has a records retention schedule that we're actually all supposed to follow. And I say that as an archivist, and yet I admit I have failed to go through every year and look through to see what I'm supposed to be retaining. But we're all beholden to that if you're an employee. If you're a student, no. But if you're an employee, yes, you're beholden. For your personal stuff, we also archivists, so we do a lot of appraisal and weeding, and a lot of times we end up doing weeding because people give us things and they haven't figured, it's hard to do this work, right? We get paid to do it, but I'm thinking of physical files here, but massive stuff, like take my garage. So we'll take the garage, we'll look through it, and we'll be like, okay, you probably don't need these tax receipts from the 60s. We may not need that. Well, I've seen that before. But so we recognize it's hard. The other thing to keep in mind is your number of 75% actually seems generous to me, because the number of what's actually valuable is usually significantly less. And then the final thing that we often have to remind ourselves is perfect is the enemy of the good. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be perfect at this. Like even just the top level folders, like by years, there you go. Something to start with, just some way to get an intellectual grip on it so it doesn't feel overwhelming. Yeah, sure.
Well, I don't practice this, but when I was practicing tax accounting, that's when my clients would do that every year, tax time. And I know that doesn't pick up pictures and stuff, but I mean, as far as like your files, paper files, or digital files, if it's not needed for the tax return, just get rid of it. I mean, I used to keep phone bills. I used to keep, utility bills until recently, and I'm an accountant, so it's really hard for me to throw those things away.
Yep.
But I'm like, why do I need this for? I don't need it. After I pay it even, I now throw it away. I'm so proud of myself, but, because you have your record of that you paid it. And so, and then I was thinking too, just sitting here thinking, how can I clean up all my email on my laptop? Okay, next time we drive to visit family 10 hours away, I'm going to take the laptop and I'm going to start cleaning that stuff out, because that's dead time, in the car. So, I don't know, but that's why I'm here. I don't do the things I know I should do.
Right. Me neither.
Another thing that I've noticed over time of being a records person for a full-time job is that I try less and less to have things make records that I don't need to be made into records. Like if I really don't need someone to email me confirmations of things, I don't ask for the email confirmation, because then I have something I have to deal with. So, I mean, obviously you don't want to do that for stuff that's important, but if it's something like, okay, fine, I don't need my receipt for the $1 soda I just bought or whatever,
Right.
Do you know what the legal ramifications of digital records are? I mean, let's face it, we're all coming into an era now where paper is going away. It really is happening now. I mean, if you do electronic banking, there is no paper anymore.
Right.
And I don't print it out. It's there. I don't know if I needed to go see a bill from 3 years ago, if I could find it or not. I don't
Right.
really know. I've never had to do that.
I think it depends on your bank, because I've had to, or you, like I know for Bank of America, for the credit card anyway, I think it may go back 5 years, but if you want older than that, you have to write to them to ask for it. And I think it just depends. Things are going more electronic, but I mean, we've seen things get hacked before.
But so like a legal document, let's say like a mortgage.
Right.
Okay, if you take your mortgage and you scan it in, it has all the signatures, all the stuff on it, and then you throw away the paper copy, the original, and then 10 years later somebody says, hey, I need that mortgage, and you print it back out, does that count?
No, I don't think so. I think some documents, and I'm not 100% sure, I don't know the laws, but I would not scan and then throw away a mortgage document. Like some documents you have to have the hard copy still, and in the event that changes, there's probably going to be some kind of way that makes it like a legitimate digital document. Like, you can sign documents electronically now. So now Adobe says, oh yeah, sign this electronically. That's not really, that's just like putting a name in cursive. There's actually software that verifies who you are, and so I think when it comes to things like mortgages or other legal documents, if they are completely digital, they're going to have to use something like that.
So there's this whole concept and guidelines for it of trusted digital repositories and trusted digital record-keeping systems that the federal government works on, big universities work on to come up with these systems, and they require things like audit trails. They want to know at the bit level if something was altered. if, and they're not very easy to obtain, if your records are created in that kind of environment, they're generally deemed trustworthy. Whether or not all of our banks and all of our car dealers and our home loan people, whether or not they're actually complying with that, I don't know. We all kind of are risking it. But yeah, that is a known problem, and the legal environment is complicated too, because when you go outside of national boundaries, remember I said some of the cloud storage is not located in the US. The EU has totally different digital privacy requirements than we do. I'm not a lawyer, so it's just complicated. I don't know. I mean,
And it's always changing,
Yeah.
I think.
from a personal perspective, I would focus on making sure you feel like you have a copy of your most important records, whether they be legally required or the things you value. If you have, and I would try to keep them in the original form they were given to you, because that would be the authoritative form. So that makes sense. Okay.
More questions? Well, let's do our activity.
Yay.
So, where's my notes? So for this activity, you guys on your desktop, let me get this out of the way. On all of your desktops, there is a file called, it's got like PD.
PDA, I'll look it up for you.
Yeah, so I can't escape this.
It's called PDA Workshop Activity Dataset.
Yes. Minimize.
Where is that located?
It's on your desktop on your computer in a folder.
Yeah, well, that's. Yeah,
Come on,
that's
man.
the abbreviated title name or folder name. That's right, Rachel,
Yep,
there.
right here. PDA Workshop Activity Dataset. So what we're pretending is this folder has a bunch of files. You can go ahead and click on it. We're pretending that you were given this you're all detectives, and you were given this laptop by someone who was murdered. So spend about 20 minutes getting into the files. This is evidence. See if you can find anything in these files that give you an idea of why this person was murdered or how it may have taken place. Yeah. And this is the big group thing. They're not working together on this one yet.
Oh, right, no, this
Okay.
is the initiative, sorry.
Okay.
Yep. So just dig around and see what you can find. And
Yeah.
ask questions about it.
Did you guys find it all? Find it? Yep, so click in the folder and then it'll open up more. Yeah, dig around in the files. You're a detective. You want to figure out who this person was, what were they doing that may have gotten them murdered. And feel free to guess, Use your imagination.
This note picture, that's good.
And there's some questions on the instruction screen that's kind of going to guide the next discussion. Okay, so how would you describe the contents of these files in a quick inventory? I know. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a ton of, there's some organization, but they're not that descriptive. Well, like stuff. Doesn't she have a stuff folder?
Stuff, yeah.
Stuff, and then an empty new folder that was probably created by mistake. There's nothing in it. Things you can't open.
Password protected stuff.
But it makes you think it might be important, right? Right. Did anyone? Let me see if it gets to that. So my next question. So how did the creator name and arrange the files? Do you think? It doesn't seem like much of an arrangement to me. I couldn't really discern. I mean, it's kind of got some groupings, but without more thought or any description. Can you imagine if there'd been way more files? with that lack of, there's no dates and.
So see, we've talked about the digital afterlife, but this also helps you in 5 years when you're like, well, what's all this?
Right, no miscellaneous folders.
Yeah, please no.
You just have to have miscellaneous 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, miscellaneous 2014, miscellaneous 2015. Right, so what's her name? So you guys got her name? Yeah, Susan Stevens.
And then in case this is spam, you can contact Roger.
Which we think is. Yeah, I couldn't get into one of the videos, but it was like, if you looked at a couple of them, it was like Roger's proposal.
Yeah. And when you open it, it just does nothing.
It does nothing, but I thought maybe it was a proposal based on the name. Did you look at the one that said, I Googled it because I wasn't sure, but on her notes it was like, look up expert on ransomware.
Oh, yeah.
And so I Googled ransomware, and I guess it's malicious software that encrypts your files so you can't get to them, and you have to pay a ransom to get it back. So maybe she was a victim, or knew someone that was a victim.
So that stuff's going on right now.
So this is an easy question, I think. So which of the directories do you think might contain private information? Maybe the ones. Which of the files do you think, or the folders, contain private information?
All the ones that are password.
Yeah.
So this is a good point about password protection. We did bring up the idea earlier that password protection is good for security, but very bad for preservation.
Right. Unless you pass on, that information to the person you want to open it.
Well, but even then, the software changes over
Oh,
time.
right.
Yeah, so it's fine, but it's not all bad.
So basically you're saying paper is still good.
We love paper.
That's the thing is, digital is, and we do. Digital is great for access, and it is great for, you just have to, people think it's easier. I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone say, well, I'm just going to scan them then, because I can get rid of these filing cabinets. And I'm like, well, and it's so easy. And I'm like, well, it's easier to get to because it's at your fingertips, but at the same time, there's a lot more upkeep. Paper files, granted they're at risk with environmental things, if floods, but you can just chuck them on a shelf and keep them in the right conditions, and generally they'll be in a form. Even newspaper, which isn't good paper, can last a really long time if kept in the right place. But still, it's not that digital records, they are harder, they're worth it, right? It's ongoing. You can't just, I did the cycle, they're good, they're preserved. No, you're always migrating and working on that and accessing them again and then saving what you changed. And it's a process. It's not just one thing you do. And it seems overwhelming, but I think once it's built into, accept it, embrace it, build it into your workflow at a little bit at a time. Start naming your files descriptively now and your folders now.
Keep in mind too, like digital, I did just say that we love paper and archives, and there is a reason for that because it's simple. But on the other hand, the digital stuff just captures so much more. Think about how many things would never be recorded if you weren't doing them digitally. I have much more rich emails than I would ever have written in handwritten letters, and so there's a lot more information we're capturing, which is useful for us. And it doesn't, part of the problem is just formatting. So if all we care about is the informational text in something, it's really a lot easier to save it. You can just save it as like a .txt. But if we care about the formatting and all the graphics, and maybe you've got some like AutoCAD files or something really big and strange, then that's where it gets trickier. But those oversized is always hard to deal with.
Right. And migrating doesn't have to be something, it's not always like I noticed, I must have a discrepancy on the computers I log into on my Word versions, because I'll jump on one Word and then it's like, we're going to migrate your files to the new format. I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't care about what font it is, or from what my naked eye, it looks the same as it did on my other computer, whatever updates there were. So sometimes that's just, you're migrating, you're just opening the file. But if you're not accessing these files for like 5 or 10 years, that's when I think it gets tricky too.
The other danger of digital files is just that, like I said, it helps us capture a lot more stuff, but it also means we have way more cluttered files because we have so much stuff. It's so easy to generate content. It's so easy to save it. So like I said earlier, I try not to make files unless I need to, just because I don't want to deal with them. But that's another trade-off, is that it's easy to make stuff, so we make stuff.
On the other end, I make stuff, but I delete a lot.
Oh, good.
And you,
So when you were talking about the storage methods, which one do you think is the best out of these three?
Combo.
yeah, none of them are the best. You have to use multiple. Combination.
Yep.
None of them are sure-proof, so you have to just use more than one.
Actually, I use all three for various things.
Like I used to.
I
But
mean,
still,
for work stuff, all three. For personal stuff, it's 2. Yeah.
so as a small group, then, if you want to just pair up in pairs, if you can talk about questions on the screen.
So there's 8 of you left, so that's kind of perfect, because
Yeah.
we can take it off. So. Yeah. Okay, everyone, let's reconvene. So, as you see on your screen now, where were we?
Go back to
Yeah, go back to the last one. So these are the questions they just did, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so does anyone want to share some of their answers to these? Like, I'm particularly interested in what you think about 3 and 4 there, if you want to talk about those, or...
We were talking about well, we were thinking, I mean, I know that since I've been in the library, I know that some faculty know that their stuff is probably something maybe the archives might want.
Yeah.
And they know to have it sent over. We're talking about, professors that have been here years, and then when they die, they still have offices full of stuff, and, but do most of the faculty know that they have, or do they have access to our services, here?
They do.
I think it's like most library services. We try to do outreach, but you're still going to find a large amount of faculty that are like, I don't know that you collected that. This year, I don't know that it's for the first time, but I don't know if you know, there's the faculty advisory group, and they meet once a year with the library liaisons, which are the liaisons in each academic department that's not a librarian but works with a specific librarian, and they meet annually. And again, I don't know if it's the first time, but it's the first time in a while anyway. The university archivist and I attended it and gave a quick spiel about university records, including faculty papers, and then services in general we offer for our special collections. And so I don't know how many of them didn't know, but it seemed like a lot didn't. And they had questions, especially with electronic records and weird formats that we don't even see anymore. But again, it's there. We try to let people know. But again, when you get hired here, there's so much information that's thrown at you, and then you're just trying to keep up with your job. So I think a lot probably still don't know. But we have a website. We have a website that tells you how to organize department records as well as faculty papers. And then it leads to, the university's retention policy, which tells you kind of what to keep, what not to keep. And that's not developed by the archives. It's a policy of the university.
That reminds me, I was talking to this young lady here about that. I came from a company that we used to once a year have a records management clean-out day. And we would bring pizza in for our departments, and then we would just all wear our grubbies, and that was what you did the whole day. You just set that day aside. But you also did electronic records as well that day. So you just made you just made a day for it, because otherwise we just tend to put it off.
Yeah, it's not part of people's normal day-to-day stuff. That's a good idea. We get a pizza budget,
The
right?
pizza budget. Well, and we share responsibilities. University actually has a records management program, because some of the records we don't keep, they don't get disposed, but there's a set amount of time to keep them. Like, I think personnel records don't come to us, they go to
No.
human resources. So not all of them, there's just different rules, and then some do get disposed of.
Yep.
But that's a great idea. I think that food is always an incentive.
Yep, and we do accept digital records in the archives. Yeah.
So any answers for, anyone want to share their answers for number 4 or number 2?
I'm inspired to just start naming this stuff correctly to begin with.
Yay!
Well, when I download the photos, at least I put them in a year, but I
Right.
don't put, you know, it says DSCN, whatever that number is, that it comes off the camera, you know.
So this is a tip for all of you. There are free to use downloadable, you have to do some research to figure out which ones are safe. I forget which ones I've been using, but there are free downloadable bulk renamers for your files. So if you wanted to rename all the files in your 2015 folder, you could do them all at once with a single program. So I like that program. I will contact you and let you know which one we've been using upstairs because I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah. Yeah, it's just file names. All it does is it's the file name itself, not the file. Yeah, not.
So you look for like a certain, it's like a find and replace, like you find all the DSCNs and you say this is
What you do is you browse to a particular folder. And this is for Windows. I don't know what it looks like in Macs, but you browse to a certain folder and all the files in there. You can say all the, you know, you select your files and then you have like a bunch of little parameters you can put in. You could say, find and replace everything before the letter T. Add such and such to the beginning of the file. Add such and such to the end of the file. Yeah.
Anyone else? Our last, and we can, I don't think we have to break up, but, so, oh, this is not it, this one?
Yeah, we did that one, right? Ah.
What themes and insights? Oh, interesting, this goes back to the exercise.
I didn't remember. Yeah, because I think that we
Who do
already
you
asked
think
that
that we
question.
got- who the
We
creator
asked that.
is?
Whoops.
What did you discover about their archiving practices? They didn't really have a lot of
Yep.
organization. So what themes and things that came up when you guys talked in small groups
Oh, yeah.
about archiving? I heard you guys talking about slides over here.
Does anybody have a good suggestion of what to do with 35mm slides?
They keep. If you want to access them, digitize them, but keep the originals because they keep really well.
How about best ways to digitize them?
There are little slide scanners.
Yeah, there's little slide scanners.
I would.
Are they
Even the flatbed scanners, they do great.
We use one of. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So there's flatbed scanners, like she's talking about, that have like these little mold tray things. You put the tray down, and you put the slides in the slots, and it knows they're slides, and it digitizes them and knows they're separate images. There are also, we have one of those upstairs in the digital initiatives unit, but we also have like this little one that's a rapid feed. It's a smaller unit, and from what I actually, Bill is our scanner. We should ask Bill. But yeah, we.
Well, and you can get personal scanners. You know, I think before we might have fancy ones, but I think that personal scanners are a lot better now than they used to be, and they scan at really high resolution. So you don't have to go out and get a super expensive institutional size. You could probably, Google and see what the reviews are. You're not the only one who's got, tons of people still have slides. And on another end, you could also go to usually commercial places can do it too. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I know that some people have done that because I've gotten their digitized files and I'm like, we could have scanned these for you, but they went and had someone else scan them and then do a nice little numbering system that didn't work. But and so I know that it's offered.
So you may have noticed with some of the exercise photos, if you zoom in enough, they get all pixelated. That's because they weren't scanned at a high enough resolution. So you want to keep that in mind too, because photos take up a lot of room. Film files take up a lot of room, but you also don't want it to be so useless that the picture has to be like an inch high and you can't see anything beyond that.
Does the library offer, we don't offer a service for people to pay outside to have it stuff done, do we?
No, it's an internal unit right now. Yeah.
But again, there are places that offer that. So I would, I'm not familiar enough with Ames yet or Des Moines to know, but.
A lot of stores now have machines where you can take in photos.
Yep.
They might even, I'm not sure, but they might even have something where you can stick some slides on there. So
Right.
if you say, oh, I want to save these hundreds are probably a lot, but 10, let's say. Because, when you start going through slides, it's kind of like, are you really
And
going to
again,
all of them?
do you want to digitize all of them or just, 1 out of 10?
The main thing, though, is that if you, I mean, this might seem obvious, but I don't know if you've done scanning before, but you need a scanner that isn't opaque on the top, otherwise the slide will look like nothing. You have to take the padding or whatever it's called on the top off, so the light shines through. So, just, yeah, almost every scanner I've ever seen will let you take that off, but if you try to scan it without taking that off, you'll get nothing. So, yeah. On the scanners on the underside of the lid, there's like this padded white, whatever it's called. And you pull it off, and then it's supposed to pull off. And then that will allow it to be transparent scanning.
For a slide.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, Dexter, would you recommend the flatbed scanner or something that we've come through? Have you done them both ways?
Yeah. Well, for personal use, I think the flatbed scanner, because you're gonna use it more anyway.
Right.
I mean, unless you're someone that has thousands of slides that you want to buy a specific slide scanner, I think just a flatbed works.
Another thing that might help as you guys are working on your own files at home is genealogy centers, either at standalone genealogy centers or as part of public libraries often help people with this sort of thing. So they may have resources that are available. Maybe they have equipment, I don't know, but genealogy places are good for helping with personal files because they think, they want to help you with your family stuff.
Also, one of our links for additional resources, the Library of Congress Personal Digital Archiving, it's the fourth link down. That page will bring you to a bunch of other links, and I know on there is one for scanning. I don't know if it breaks out into slides, but it had a ton of links. It leads to a lot of other places. There's a ton of information out there on how to save your old digital files. For not again, for people who aren't going to have the resources of a big institution, there's a lot out there for, just regular people.
And we have, I think the link is on here, but we have a guide that we've put together for campus on sort of recommended file formats.
Is
it on there?
No, it's not. We have the Library of Congress recommended format
Which is fine,
statement.
yeah.
But if you're interested in ours, we have one. But again, it's for the business records, but still, you can use it for your personal files.
Because it's like lists, has smiley faces for good record, thumb down for don't use this.
And I think the Library of Congress, it's they have a list, but they have a recommended format statement, and I think they update it every year because things change.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, maybe a format that was iffy a couple years ago has got stronger, so.
The other thing is, like you might think a JPEG is just a simple file, but I want to say there's over 13 variants of it, probably more than that by far. So we don't care about that for our own uses, but the preservation and machines care about that because they can tell the differences and the very minute differences in file formats. And stuff like that can mess up preservation options. So again, JPEGs are bad for preservation, don't use them.
Anything else? Well, if you have any follow-up questions, both of our emails are on the handout. I'll be happy to send you more resources to other places. And so if you could fill out your evaluation if you have one, that'd be excellent. We didn't give them to staff because because it's for non-staff. Although for staff, I would like feedback, if you could say what worked for you, what you thought, maybe the description wasn't quite what you thought or things that you thought went well. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.